Hey everyone, sorry for the hiatus. It's been pretty hectic lately and I have a lot to do, so my uploads will most likely be about once a week, maybe twice a week. I hope you enjoy. It had been weeks in the making. Jeremy and Zach set out for their camping trip. The two set off early so they could arrive before it was too dark outside. On arrival, the two quickly set out for their adventure in the heavily forested woods of their hometown, Townsend, Tennessee. If they felt they were far enough away from the trails, they set up their campsite. They wanted to have a secluded stay in the wilderness where they would be the only two souls in sight. The pair quickly set up their tents and went to sleep for the night. After a long road trip and a hike through the wilderness, they decided it was best to get a good start for the day ahead. In the morning, the two woke to a beautiful sunrise and decided it was best to eat some breakfast before heading out for their hike that day. They wanted to discover what was to be seen in these beautiful lush woods. After eating and having a nice morning cup of coffee, the two set out for their hike. After about an hour of trudging through the area, they came upon a cabin. It was odd to them. It was so remote, and it seemed like it hadn't been touched in ages. "Do you think anyone lives there?" Jeremy asked Zach. "I'm pretty sure no one's been here in a long time," said Zach. "Let's see what it looks like inside," Jeremy pronounced. Jeremy was the adventurous type with a lack of grace, while Zach was a more reserved and polite young man. Zach replied, "I don't know if we should. What if someone does stay there? It would be trespassing." Jeremy sighed at Zach's response and quickly stated, "I'll go in. You watch from outside and make sure no one sees me go in then." Zach knew it was pointless to fight with him, so he just followed Jeremy. As Jeremy started going in the front door, Zach walked around the back of the house. The house was a small one-story cabin that looked to be at least 100 years old. The wood was moss-covered and starting to decay. Jeremy walked inside and saw a very old fireplace and a cot that looked like it was 60 years past its expiration date. But that was about it. The place was pretty bare. When he walked further in, he saw to his right was a staircase. He was puzzled by this because it was clearly a one-story building. On the opposite side of the staircase was a hatch that looked like it led to a cellar. Jeremy assumed the stairs might go to a hole in the ceiling, so he wanted to check out what that looked like. He made his way up the creaky old wooden steps. When he got to the top of the staircase, he was baffled. On the top left was a door that you could barely see from below. How could a door be there? He opened the door and took a step inside the room. The door slammed shut behind him, and Zach could immediately hear Jeremy's screams. "The door is stuck! I can't get out! Help!" Zach was outside walking around the house when he heard this. He assumed Jeremy was talking about the front door, so he ran to the front of the house to try and pry it open. To his surprise, the door opened with ease. Inside, he saw the same fireplace and cot Jeremy saw. He looked over at the staircase, assuming, just as Jeremy did, that it went to some kind of roof access. Zach then assumed Jeremy was distressed and was talking about the hatch, not a door. Zach walked over to the hatch and lifted it up to reveal a set of stairs leading to a dark cellar. Pulling out his flashlight, he started walking down the steps. In the basement, he saw a few shelves surrounding a metal table. Everything looked rusty, as it should. As Zach got closer, however, he noticed that it wasn't just rust on the table, it was dried blood. Looking around, he saw a bunch of tools and surgical instruments covered in dried blood as well. Zach then heard Jeremy scream from above him. "Help, Zach, please, I'm upstairs!" Upstairs, Jeremy was frantic. After the door slammed shut behind him, he decided to scan the room to see if there was any reason to panic. To his amazement and fear, he saw a room with huge vaulted ceilings. The woodwork was fancy and the walls were in excellent condition. Quickly noticed to his horror, in the center of the room stood a young woman. She was wearing a white robe. It looked fancy, but tattered and gray. The young woman's face was pointed towards the ground. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he said in his southern accent. The woman had no response. In her right hand she held a cross. Her left hand was just by her side, the sleeves of her dress extending further than her hands. Jeremy was very curious if this woman was okay still, so he slowly made his way towards her. On his way over, he smelled a horrid stench, like rotting flesh. Both Zach and Jeremy had seen their fair share of animal carcasses, having gone camping many times as children, so they knew the smell well. When he finally reached the woman, she looked up at him. He was mortified. The skin on her face looked as if it was falling off. Her eyes were an opaque white. Her jaw was broken on one side, her mouth wide open. If Jeremy wasn't so scared, he would have vomited from the smell. This is when Jeremy turned towards the door and started banging on it, yelling, "Help, Zach, please, I'm upstairs." Once Zach heard this, he bolted up the stairs of the cellar. This time he entered a cabin unknown to him. The fireplace was lit, the floors were fresh and stained, and the cot looked as if it was new. He looked in front of him and saw the staircase. Not having time to ponder the nuances around him, he proceeded up the stairs with immense speed. When he got to the door at the top of the stairs, he was confused. No one was in the room. It was the same room Jeremy had been in. However, now it was decayed. What the hell is going on? Zach stated in pure confusion. When he turned around to look at the cabin, it was all old and decayed again. He was absolutely dumbfounded as to what was happening. Am I going crazy? He muttered to himself. Zach then proceeded to look around the small cabin, finding nothing. Assuming Jeremy might be messing with him, he went back to the cellar, thinking his friend may have hid, and then bolted into the basement when Zach went up the stairs. Zach, in his state of confusion, was now back in the basement, except now there was a light on the ceiling, and after reaching the bottom of the steps, he looked around very puzzled. The table was clean and the instruments were as well. Zach didn't know what to think at this point. His heart was just pounding clear out of his chest. He quickly heard the cellar hatch open. Completely panicking, Zach grabbed a nearby knife and hid beneath the staircase. He heard a man coming down the steps, heavy-footed and large. He knew this wasn't Jeremy. Zach watched through the slits in the stairs. The man was nicely dressed, but Zach could smell the scent of rotting flesh. Zach watched the man go over to the table and grab various tools and some chain. When the man turned around, Zach's heart dropped. The man had no eyes. His mouth was sewn shut as well. The man's skin was falling off the bone, but not like an elderly person. It was detached and rotting. Zach watched in horror as he saw the man go up the stairs and turn off the light at the top. Upstairs, in the fancy-looking room, Jeremy is pounding on the door still, trying to get as far away as he can from this rotting woman. He had just yelled for Zach when this woman's voice muttered just a few words from her broken, raspy vocal cords. "We will purify you." As Jeremy turned to look at the woman, he could feel something pierce his chest. It was the tip of the cross the woman had been holding. He turned around, adrenaline surging through his body. He saw that she was holding a chain that was attached to the cross. As he looked down at his chest, he saw the sharp tip of the cross protruding through his stomach. He screamed in pain and collapsed to the floor. The woman started reeling the chain and laughing maniacally. Jeremy's senses kicked in full gear and he started clawing at the floor, trying to get free. The woman had painfully and slowly pulled Jeremy to her when she looked at him straight in the face and said, "Sinner." Jeremy screamed, "Zach!" just before the rotting woman put her hand over his mouth and said, "Hush, child. We will make sure you see the light." Zach heard Jeremy scream his name after the man had left the cellar. He was so scared he could barely stand, let alone stop shaking. He decided he needed to help Jeremy fast, or it would be too late. Clenching the knife already in his hand, he proceeded to run up the stairs to the main floor. It was now lively again. Fire lit, cot clean. He ran upstairs, not even thinking about the changing states of the rooms for long. Smashing open the attic door, he immediately fell to his knees. Looking down from the doorway, he saw a trail of blood leading up to Jeremy. There he was, hanging from the ceiling. His arms were both pinned up with chains, a spike going through each side of his hands. His stomach was flayed open, intestines hanging down, and his insides were all over the floor. The skin on his back was split down the middle and raised up from his shoulders to the tips of his fingers, as if it was to give him wings. Zach was so scared, so confused, so broken. He didn't know what to do. Who were these people? Where were these people? He yelled out, "Where the hell are you?" But there was no response. He quickly turned around to look down the staircase into the still lively home. Standing at the basement hatch was the decaying man and the woman. The man said nothing. Even though he had no eyes, it was like he was looking at Zach. The woman just laughed maniacally, jaw half falling off. Zach was so scared, but he knew the only way out was the front door. Brandishing the knife in his hand, he told them, "Back up! I know how to use this!" Then he vaulted off the staircase into the front door. He was expecting the two zombie-like people to chase him, but they didn't even move. He was staring at them as he opened the front door, holding the knife in their direction. The woman just laughed harder in a broken cackle. The man was just facing Zach, expressionless. Zach opened the front door and stepped forwards, slamming the front door behind him. As he turned to look at the forest outside, his eyes widened. He was still in the house, except it was the decaying version he initially had seen. He went to look behind him, knowing that he was still in front of the door, but when he turned around, there was no door. Zach quickly came up with the idea that going to the attic was safest. Downstairs was just a death trap waiting to happen, and he assumed these people would be down there arming themselves. As he got upstairs, it was now the old decaying attic. No Jeremy, just scratch marks on the floor from where he had been dragged. Zach was freaking out. He quickly reached for his flashlight, but he must have dropped it in all the chaos. From his bag, he grabbed a lighter and a can of bug spray. He quickly illuminated the room with the burst from the spray and the lighter. There was no one in there but him. That's when he heard the woman yell from the floor below, "We have another sinner to purify!" Zach was terrified. He sat against the door and grabbed a piece of paper and a pencil out of his backpack and quickly started scratching a note on it, hoping someone may find it someday. Police arrived on the scene. Morning after these events took place, ashes of the cabin were all that remained. A local had seen a large plume of smoke emanating from the woods that morning. The officers combed through the rubble of the cabin to find a man curled into a ball, blackened by the fires. The man was holding a small metal tin in his hands. He looked as if he was shielding it from the fire, trying to protect it. The officers documented the scene and removed the tin from the poor man's hands, and it was a note that read, "They will not purify me, I will purify them." The officers were confused. Why would this man want this to be his last message? The one officer turned towards the other and told him a story. This cabin belonged to a couple at the turn of the century. The woman and man were married religious fanatics. It was said that they killed hundreds of travelers. Whenever they would find a hiker or camper, they would invite them for a meal, during which they would question their religious views. Any stranger who didn't share their views was tortured horribly. One day the man cheated on his wife, and she took his eyes and had sewn his mouth shut. One of their victims had escaped eventually. They reported it to the local authorities and a mob surrounded the cabin. The man took his own life by slitting his throat. The woman, however, had tried to defend her home. The mob broke inside of the cabin, demanding the execution of the woman. She was standing at the top of the cellar. Many angry townsfolk tried to grab at her, but she wouldn't go easy. She pushed herself off of the men and fell down the stairs. As she tumbled down the steps, she broke her neck, and she landed on her face, breaking her jawbone. She died in that house. The villagers were now satisfied with their pillage, and they left. The local authorities, knowing what happened, never charged a single person with their murder, and they were buried on their property as their will stated. The other cop looked at his partner and said, "So what the hell happened to this guy?" gesturing to the burnt man. The first cop stated, "Sounds like he was a fanatic who died to extend the couple's legacy. It's clear he started the fire. The highest burn point was next to his body." The remains of Jeremy were never found. Months later, the cabin had reached national fame. Horror enthusiasts were intrigued by the story of the couple and Zach. A group of teenagers had set out into the woods to see the ashes of the destroyed home for themselves. When they arrived, they moved around burnt timbers looking for some mementos of the occasion. One young boy moved a timber to find a hatch. "Hey guys, I think I found the basement." In his excitement, he opened the hatch and saw a light on inside. He walked into the cellar as the hatch shut behind him violently. I hope you enjoyed this story. It was kind of my take on a cabin in the woods, Witcher kind of story. I'm working on my ability to read these stories as well as eventually getting a microphone that is suitable. If you did like this, please like, share, and subscribe. Over time, hopefully I'm able to afford, the amenities that will make my production much better. So please let me know what you think. I really hope you enjoyed this and have a great day.